Professor McCloskey, thanks for granting me this interview about your recent two books, Better in Humanomics, A New and Old Way of Doing Economic Science, and Beyond Behaviorism, Positivism, and Neo-Institutionalism in Economics. Now, can you tell us the story behind these two books? I mean, how you came across them, or this big project was born, and if, in a sense, I can say, I can say that the Humanomics project is your long life project.
Yeah, it is. It certainly is. I'm going to do a book someday, soon, I think, because I'm 80. I'd better get to it. That will tell how my views on economics changed over my whole life. From the time I was a baby, when your economy is your mama, up through being a Keynesian and a social engineer and a Chicago economist and studying the humanities and blah, blah, gradually doing Austrian economics. I got very interested in that in the 1990s, and then gradually realizing that what my life means, we're all looking for that, is humanomics. That's what it's tended towards. And what I mean by humanomics is not to throw away the mathematics or the statistics or economic theory or something. No, I think they're still very good. But to add to them the humanities, the reflections that humans have on how language works, how human relations works. So you could say economics with the humans left in is the idea. And so that's been a long, in a way, it started way back, in the early 1980s. And I've gradually I'm a very slow thinker. So I finally, got it, I think. And that's expressed in a positive way in this book called Humanomics, where I say, oh yeah, please, come in, look at the world this way. Both these books are aimed at economists primarily, or fellow travelers, so to speak, law professors and political scientists. So the Humanomics book is meant to be a nice book, and the other book is meant to be a nasty book, where I criticize the non-humanomics tendency in recent economics.
So this is because if the humanomics is the economics with the humans left in,
yeah.
I may ask, who is left? Who is left out and why, or by whom?
By most economists. They treat human beings as vending machines. My colleague, Gary Becker at the University of Chicago, is the epitome of this. And, you put a coin into the person and out comes a trade. And Adam Smith, of blessed memory, may his tribe increase, understood very well that trade is a form of speech, that it's a form of human interaction. And in his other great book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, he made this perfectly clear. So it's the reduction of humans to vending machines. Now look, sometimes that's what you do in an economic transaction. When you buy a newspaper from the newsagent, you give them the coin, but after a while, you become friendly with them. You say hello. In Italy, you would see him at the local bar having a coffee. You'd say, "Hi, Giovanni, come vai?" And that's the human element that I think is very important in how an economy actually works.
I see. So it seems that the two great obstacles to your Humanomics are behaviorism, of course, Neo-Institutionalism. We will talk about Neo-Institutionalism a little bit later. So what's wrong with behaviorism and positivism, more in particular?
Well, it is this reductions of humans to machines. I mean, look.
To donkeys, more or less, like stick and carrots, like donkeys.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Sticks and carrots. If that's all we were, a mother would not value her child above her own life. There are these aching scenes in Ukraine of mothers throwing themselves over their children during a bombing raid to protect the child from the shrapnel. If that were the way people were, carrots and sticks, they wouldn't go over the top at the Somme, or worse, on the Italian-Austrian front. So a lot of, and we wouldn't be entrepreneurs, because sheer incentives are not what makes for an entrepreneur. It's creativity, small and large. You start a new hairdressing salon in your neighborhood. You put all your heart and soul into it, and it works or it doesn't. Or you do great investments with banks and so on. So there's a lot more to people than the carrot and the stick or the vending machine. And a certain kind of behaviorism, neuroeconomics, for example, wants to reduce the mind to the brain, as though it's easy. I call it, I make fun of it by calling it the new phrenology, the bumps on the head. And as though, because you knew that when people see the number 3, a certain part of their brain lights up, now you know their mind. Well, not really. It's not stupid to do it, and it's worth doing, but it's not really the same thing as the mind.
Okay. And in the central chapters of the second book, you dwell on the main deadly sin of Neo-Institutionalism. So let's talk a little bit about sins. Of course, there are many, but according to you, first of all, you believe that it is not a scientific success, right?
No.
Why?
Well, people talk about it a lot. They say, well, I was just reading a paper for a conference tomorrow on a neo-institutional approach to women's entrepreneurship in different countries. And they cite Douglas North, and they think they're doing neo-institutionalism. And it's not very persuasive, because it's as though there are a whole bunch of things that go wrong in this project. One of them is that they say, well, we're going to impose institutions from the top, like the rule of law, top down. And that's, I must say, a great temptation to statism, to a belief that people need to be treated like children. So that's one problem. But then they say, but of course, social norms matter. The social norms of what's it called? The evening stroll in Italy, the passeggiata.
Passeggiata, yeah.
See, there are norms of how you interact with people and how you dress. You must dress very well, and you walk of an evening. And they include that as an institution. Well, which is it? Is it coercive laws that actually force people to do things? Or is it something coming from inside, from being an Italian? So this is a mush. You've put together formal laws and informal customs. And here's the problem. Here's one of the ways of looking at the problem. The individual, well, you could put it this way. individual liberty, the free will of individuals, what was your expression? The
spirit, you mean the spirit of the law, or
but the freedom to be a human.
Yeah.
That kind of
permission of being a human.
Permission to be a
Erika
human.
Young, yeah.
That is set aside. And it means that you're going to misunderstand a great deal of the economy. In particular, I claim in that book and in the Humanomics book that you're going to misunderstand how we got so very rich. You and I are not descendants of the crowned heads of Europe. At least I'm not. Maybe you are. I don't think so. Our ancestors were unspeakably poor. Yet here we are flying around the world and, being professors and so on. So it just misses the essence. See, I don't want to reduce everything to something else. That's not the point, to reduce it to culture, as people often say in a kind of vague way. No, I'm just saying that with the incentives, with the vending machines, they're also humans.
I see. So it's ideas that matters, not institutions.
Very much ideas that matter, and ideas that in conversations such as we're having develop, are fruitful. I've always been fascinated by how human conversation results in new things, new ideas, if they're sincere.
Of course.
If all you do is spout your truth and I spout my truth, and we don't, as the great monk, American monk, Merton said in 1947, he said, if all I wish is to tell you my truth and won't listen to yours, we'll never find the truth between us. And it's a profound point.
That's true. So do you distinguish in this regard ideas and culture with regard to Neo-Institutionalism?
Well, yeah.
Because you said that the Neo-Institutionalism has got a wrong conception of culture.
It has a kind of flabby and sort of too much encompassed idea of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Culture includes the passeggiata, it includes Italian laws, it includes Italian driving habits, it includes the borders of Italy, and just all these things added up. And it's too vague a term. I get sort of irritated when people say, I see, you do culture. And as I said before, there's a temptation to reduce everything to culture. I'd have to call him a frenemy, a friend who was also an enemy. David Landis was this way. He, as an economic historian, he wanted to reduce everything to culture and then deny the carrot and the stick or the vending machine entirely. And I don't that's not humanomics. That's to go well, in fact, there's a kind of fatalism. Robert Putnam's book about southern Italy is this way. And my father's colleague in government at Harvard, I'm going to forget his name, who wrote in 1950.
Banfield?
Yeah, Banfield, whom my father hired. He was chair of the department. He hired him from Chicago. There's this kind of fatalism.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, well, the Southern Italians are just the way they are. And then they come to the United States. And in 2 generations, they've gone to college. These are people who came illiterate in Italian.
That's right. Okay, to come back to Humanomics and Liberty. The first chapter, the title is Humanomics and Liberty, Promise Better Economic Science. Let me quote this passage. Growing up requires an expanded but modest humanistic science that analyzes the creativity of human action in retrospect and accepts in prospect the epistemological limits of ant-like prediction and control. It's the humanities in humanomics.
That's right.
Can you comment a little bit? Because it seems to be that you are against the paradigm of prediction that seems to be, in a sense, or seems to put at risk, I would say, human liberty.
Absolutely. And Milton Friedman told me once that he regretted that he wrote this methodological essay in the early 50s, which had tremendous influence in economics.
You regret it?
But
you regret it?
Yes, he did. And I'm not sure if that particular worry was, pardon me, I have this terrible cold. We've all had masks for 2.5 years, so we never got colds.
That's right.
So, this idea that economics is about prediction is a particularly silly idea. If it were true, then economists could make money because they would know the future of the stock market. I mean, come on. They're not. Queen Elizabeth, after the 2008 crash, went to LSE and scolded the economists for not predicting the crash. Well, if they could, they would have sold short and made an infinite amount of money. They could have bought the Isle of Man. So, it's we're historians, and we're social philosophers. We economists. We can tell you that's probably a really lousy idea to make everyone into a child, a dependent child in the economy, or a subordinate child.
But how can economists get interested in, the issue of liberty? Because they are so obsessed by prediction, modeling, and so forth. So this is, true humanomics is to be preached, perhaps in some way. But I'm not sure that they can be convinced by.
That's right, because it goes back to the French Enlightenment, as against the Scottish Enlightenment. The French Enlightenment was chiefly about reason, and it results in the next century in Comtean sociology, predict in order to control. And then it becomes positivism under Comte, and then Neo-Positivism in the late 19th century, and then this belief that economists have that the only way to be scientific is to predict, like a physicist predicting the orbit of the moon or something. And it's just it really is to ignore human liberty. And it's the freeing of human liberty that made us wealthy and able to explore spiritually.
How would you define liberty? Because, I'm thinking about your by now famous trilogy, The Bourgeois Era. There you can find liberty as creativity, liberty as non-domination or non-slavery.
Yeah.
So it seems that you attempt to encompass different kinds of liberties, as if they were tending towards maybe one ideal big liberty with capital L.
I'm here at Cato, the Isaiah Berlin Chair in Liberal Thought.
The famous two concepts of liberty.
Two concepts. So it's negative liberty that both Berlin and I admire most. Although he actually had, made substantial compromises with positive liberty. But positive liberty means income. If you're rich, you can do more. You can have a private airplane and go where you want, and have a bigger house, and take a vacation when you want, right? So in a way, that's freedom from constraints. But negative liberty is freedom from physical constraints by other humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's non-slavery. And it can be the domination of a child by his father, or the domination of a wife by her husband, physical domination, or a slave by his master, or a citizen by her state. These are all versions of negative slavery. And I think for clear thinking, we need to distinguish these two quite sharply. Lots of people want to mush them together. I say no. Because otherwise we don't know whether negative liberty, such as we've substantially had expanding in the last 2 centuries, causes income to go up, as I think it does, causes spiritual freedom to explore to go up, as I think it does, or we've solved the problem, so to speak, by definition.
Mm-hmm.
In the strict sense, we've begged the question.
So I would also say that your concern with and care for human freedom is also connected to this widespread call for more and more regulations around
Yes.
the world. So that's why
Yes.
you want to defend, or at least to advocate, a negative notion.
Yes, because I think there's a premise, or a kind of almost a syllogism that most economists, modern economists, have in their head, that people are stupid, irrational, that the market can't take care of it, that there's no way we could have we could hire sensible guides or hire high quality or anything like that. There's no way out of it. And so we're stupid, but the government is perfect. And advised by smart economists like Thaler or Sunstein,
The nudging.
we're going to nudge you. And I find that hideous. I find it bad for the human spirit. Again, look, another name for liberalism, for this negative liberty, is adultism. All other political philosophies, left, right, center, it doesn't matter, treat humans as children. On the left, as sad children. Oh, you're so sad, povera. We'll give you stuff, and I'm going to take over your life and make it better. You poor thing, you're pathetic, you're a child. On the right, bad children, sad or bad, bad children. You're bad, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're a gypsy. We don't like you, we're going to bring out the police and discipline you, you bad, bad child. And the liberal idea since Locke and Adam Smith and Mary Wollstonecraft and John Stuart Mill and so on and so forth is, Einaudi in Italy, is no, we're going to treat you as an adult with equal permission. That's the key, not equal opportunity, but equal permission.
Permission of being human.
Permission to be human. No, but it's a good phrase. And equality of humans is impossible to attain. As St. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 12, we have varied gifts. There's no way around it, we just do. Some people are more beautiful than me. Few, I have to admit, but you know, some people are smarter than I am. Some people are wiser or whatever, younger, say, or older, whichever you like. So to achieve equality, we'd have to make people into copies of each other by force.
So the relation that you see between liberty and equality seems to prioritize liberty over equality, right?
Yeah, because then you get real equality. You get equality of respect. You get equality of permission. And then you can flourish in a dignified way, whatever you do. You can be make the perfect espresso in your bar, or you can be a great scholar or a great, sailor or something. You can do it with dignity, and in such a society, people respect each other because they're not being treated like children. If the government or society generally, not just the government, but if social customs treat adults like children, subordinate women to their husbands, for example, then the women or the people start behaving like children. So to get a society of self-respecting adults, you need this equality of permission and this lack of coercion.
So it is essentially an idea of equality before the law, right?
Well, yes, it's certainly equality before the law, which is inscribed on our Supreme Court, that phrase, equality before the law. But it's more than that, because it's bigger. It's not just equality of before the law, but equality of all permissions. You can have laws, equal laws, that are hideous. You can have laws, for example, that prevent you from moving into a certain occupation because only people born into it can become doctors. So equality before the law doesn't suffice. It has to be equality of permission.
I was just wondering what is the place of solidarity in your thought, because we've been talking about liberty and equality, so the third pillar of the French Revolution, so to say.
Sure.
And you devoted lots of efforts to formalize and conceptualize solidarity in terms of a specific kind of virtue, a mixture of the basic virtues.
That's right.
In
love and justice
and faith.
Faith. Yeah. And that's, it's characteristic of humans. We're a cooperative species. The great insect man, E.O. Wilson, a great scientist, said Marx was correct. Central planning is just right. That's what we should do. The only mistake was he applied it to the wrong species, to humans instead of to ants. Humans voluntarily associate on a massive scale if they're allowed to. For example, children play spontaneously. Actually, all mammals play. Not birds, I don't think. But mammals play. Small, immature mammals. And humans play in very elaborate ways, boys and girls. And that's forming social groups. To play it, cowboys and Indians, or play house. You be the mama, I'll be the papa, that kind of thing. So we're a cooperative species, and there's nothing in liberalism that denies that. Now, there's a kind of version that our friends on the left think we're all about, which is Ayn Rand, sort of selfishness as the basis of human life. And that's not what I believe. I don't think that, to hell with other people is a good way to run a society. And it's not. In his other great book, Adam Smith showed very clearly that people are social animals and can't be human unless they're raised up as social animals.
I see. Just one penultimate question, that is the relation between Christianity and liberalism, and this is because you defined yourself as a classic, Christian classical liberal.
I am.
So how do you see this relationship? Because it's a hot topic and it's highly contested. I mean, at least
Well, there are two things to say about it. For one thing, there's a claim by a man named Larry Siedentop, a French, an American who specializes in French political thought. He says that liberalism comes out of the Catholic Church. And this I regard as insane. This is very strange. And I don't think there's a deep history of liberalism in Europe. The kind of, I don't know, Eurocentric cliche that human liberty has been striven for millennia and we're finally achieving it, that's nonsense. Human liberty is very recent. It's in the last couple of centuries that it's happened. And it's got nothing to do with Christianity. So that's one point. On the other hand, Christianity and Islam and Hinduism and almost anything you want to name is consistent, can be made consistent with liberalism. I just finished a book called God in Mammon, Public Theology for an Age of Innovism. And I'm hoping that it'll be published soon. And it's an appeal to my progressive Christian friends that they don't need to be socialists to be Christians. They think the Sermon on the Mount is all you need as a social theory. And it's a glorious text, but it's not, for one thing, it's not consistent, seriously consistent with free will. So free will and free markets go together. They can. This drives my theological friends crazy. They hate to hear this, but I've got to tell them so that they know it.
I see. To conclude, some thoughts about the future. Humanomics is a better economics, and it is also bettering.
Yes.
So what other direction will your Humanomics project take? I mean, what is next on your agenda?
Well, what's next on my agenda is for example, is a book on medieval English agriculture, which I started as long ago as 50 years ago and scattered in articles in various different journals. And I'm bringing it together as a coherent book. But my views about economics have changed since then. I was going to call it The Prudent Peasant, where the peasant was a vending machine. And I've changed. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that prudence is part of life, but so is faith. So now I call it The Prudent and Faithful Peasant. An essay in historical humanomics. And it'll exhibit the serious scientific side, or not side isn't quite the word, but a serious scientific, shall we say, example of humanomics. I'm going to do, I forget whether I mentioned it or not, an autobiography where I try to entwine my life with my growing understanding from the time I was a child to now as an 80-year-old woman, from childhood to humanomics and all the stages in between.
Humanomics in retrospect, an insight.
Yeah, that's not a bad title for it. So anyway, I'll probably think of other books to write, but I'm 80 years old. If I'm lucky, I got 10 years of active life, if I'm very lucky. But my mom lived to 98, and until she was about 94, she was independent and in pretty good shape. So maybe I've got. So I wish you the best luck
for this productive future. And
thank you.
Thanks a lot for granting me this interview and for the time you devoted to me and the interview.
Grazie mille.
Prego.